Okay, so we're talking today about sexual and relationship violence. This is another hard lecture. In nursing, we hold a lot of hard things and a lot of pain for our patients. So it's really important that you learn some ways of dealing with that. You learn how to leave work at work, be fully present at work with your patient, and then how to leave that there so that you can carve out some time for yourself and your family and friends. It's also important that you know when you hit your limit and when you need to move on to something else. Um, because the hard things that we deal with can become overwhelming. So when we talk about sexual and relationship violence, we tend to think of rape and sexual assault over here, and then domestic violence is this other thing over here. So when I started teaching this lecture several years ago, I began to realize that there's a lot of overlap and there's a lot of times that those two things go together. And we're going to also look at another connection with intimate partner violence as we move through this. But the first thing we need to talk about is statistics. Current statistics are difficult to find. They weren't kept for a while, and then COVID has actually made it difficult to do much else but COVID. So I'm really hoping that if COVID is ever under control, that our public health agencies can renew their focus on some other needs, including these. But in the data that I found is from 2015. In 2015, 43.6% of women reported that at some time in their life, they had been the recipient of some form of sexual violence. 1 in 5 women reported that they had been the victim of a completed or attempted rape. 1 in 6 women reported that they had been coerced to sexual activity that they did not want. 24.8% of men reported that in their lifetime they had been the recipient of some form of sexual violence. 1 in 14 men reported rape by being made to penetrate. 1 in 10 men reported sexual coercion. 2.6% of men reported completed or attempted rape. When we talk about rape of men, we typically have an image in our head of forcible rape, forcible anal rape by another man. But men can also be raped by being made to penetrate. So be aware of that. Stalking. 1 in 6 women and 1 in 17 men reported having been stalked at some time in their lives. Intimate partner violence. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 3 men reported intimate partner violence. So it's reported the same in this study. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men reported that it had some impact on their lives. And that may have to do with some stereotypes and some stigma for men, but it may also have to do with average greater physical strength. Intimate partner violence is more likely to be fatal to women. Data suggests that 1 in 5 homicide victims are killed by their intimate partners or by a current or former intimate partner. Over half of female homicide victims are killed by a former or current intimate partner. You can delve deeper into these statistics. There have also been studies that showed that a large percentage of women in prison are actually in prison as a direct or indirect result of an abusive relationship. Either they were forced, coerced, or otherwise involved in a crime by an abusive partner, or they are actually jailed for self-defense against an abusive partner. So intimate partner violence plays a large role in life for a lot of women. It also affects men. Women are more likely to die. Just that's a tragic fact. Intimate partner homicide. In a CDC study from 2003 to 2014, 55.3% of homicides of female victims were related to intimate partner violence. In 2016, 962 women in reporting states died by homicide committed by current or former intimate partners. That is 0.51 of 100,000. So again, we have a lot of women being killed by current or former intimate partners. There is a connection that has been noticed because there have been restrictions on gun research and because there have been a lot of other distractions as far as public health research. It has not been researched, but a lot of people have noticed that a common denominator in mass shootings is that the shooter almost always has been involved in a violent relationship at some point, almost always has been the perpetrator of intimate partner or family violence at some point. So this doesn't just have an individual impact, it has a societal impact. You also may notice that all of these statistics are focused on cisgender heterosexual relationships. Gay and lesbian relationships may also involve violence, and homophobia may impact the response by law enforcement, shelters, and other sources. Someone who's in a gay or lesbian relationship and is experiencing domestic violence may have a harder time finding a place in shelter, and may get even less response by law enforcement in terms of assistance. Violence against transgender or gender nonconforming persons has been largely ignored until recently. Statistics just actually started being kept in the last, I want to say decade, pretty recently. In 2020, at least 44 transgender people died by violence that was usually aimed at them because they were transgender. And like all sexual and gender-related violence, this is underreported. In Oklahoma, we have no current statistics posted. In 2016, 37 women in Oklahoma died by homicide committed by current or former intimate partners. That is 0.94 of 100,000, which is more than double the national rate based on the states that reported. Okay, so this is a major health problem. The patients that you see are frequently experiencing or have experienced some form of relationship-based or sexual violence in their lives, and that affects their care. The cost of relationship violence and sexual violence, there's a financial impact on the individual. Victims lose wages, lose jobs, are unable to complete education because of abusive relationships or because of the fallout from a sexual assault. There are medical costs that usually aren't covered. People have been charged for rape kits, for example. There are court costs if they choose to address it through court, or sometimes if an abusive partner, chooses to stay in touch with them through court. There are costs involved in moving out, getting out of an abusive relationship, and in hiding. The public health impact, we lose a lot of productivity in this country because people who are being abused or have been assaulted are unable to work, either temporarily or permanently. The cost in public resources is high: police, EMS, and prosecution. The cost of unpaid medical bills, public assistance for people who have to leave abusive partners. According to the CDC, the cost for domestic violence totaled $8.3 billion in 2003, and that's a really old statistic, so it's likely to be more at this point. So from all this, what we need to gather is that intimate partner violence is a serious problem, that sexual assault and sexual violence is a serious problem, and that they are health problems that we need to address. So we're going to come back in the next section and talk about some types of abuse.